kids get older, right? And you realize that they don't stay young, but so long. I read something the other day. I don't know if I told you this whenever we saw each other. I don't know how true these statistics are, but it really hit home. And it basically said that 93% of the time that you're going to spend with that child is between birth and 18 years of age.
Dude, you matter so much. 3 nuggets from my conversation with Phillip today are: 1, create space. You have the power to create space to connect with your kiddos. 93% of the time you'll spend with your kid will be spent before they turn 18. That means after they move out of your house, only 7% of the time is going to be after that. It's wild. And thirdly, how not to let fences or gates hold you back from creating lifetime memories with your kids. Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview incredible fathers, gaining wisdom from their stories for you and I to grow in our craft. I'm your guide, Ned Shout, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 11 to 18, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 20th year of marriage. So yes, I am in the thick of it. I am in this with you, and I'm rebelling daily against those low expectations for fathers. And I want to create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. My friend, you and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. This episode is brought to you by The Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. The role of the father is to serve, guide, provide, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my friend Phillip, and I learned just so much connecting with him. I hope you enjoy meeting my friend Phillip. I feel so good. So it's Good Friday today. You took the week off. I have the day off. And so it's really nice to be rolling into our conversation without a bunch of emails or phone calls or things that were all going on. So it's nice to connect with you. Now,
Zero stress.
What's that? Zero stress. Those days are rare, right? So from the moment I met you, right, we started doing some business together. We went out to dinner, and during that conversation, we had a 3-hour dinner. And there were things that you said about the way that you're wanting to show up well for your family that just led me to go, man, I would love to have a conversation with this guy about fatherhood. So here we are, maybe about 8-9 months later, and I'm looking forward to this. So I'm going to jump into some questions right out the gate, just so people know who I'm talking to.
Okay.
How old do you find yourself today?
Well, I'm 44 today. Do I feel 44? Maybe 50. I don't know, Dad.
Some days 50, some days 20.
Yeah, exactly.
How many years you been married?
13 years.
Nice. And how many kiddos do you have, and what are their ages?
So we have 2 kids. One's 11 and one's 6. So 5 years age gap there.
Nice. And then are there any more coming down the pipeline, or are we good with 2?
We're going to let whatever happens happen, and we would totally be open to it. The older you get, the more you kind of miss those days. So it was funny that you asked that. My wife just mentioned something to me a couple of days ago, and most likely we're done, but who knows, right?
Yeah, it's interesting that the conversation, because I'm 40, my wife's 42, and I got snipped, which I actually wish I hadn't have done. So that's a whole nother conversation. But you could go back on it. But yeah, it's interesting. It's like, are we having the conversation because our oldest is like going to college soon, and we're sad the season is ending, or are we having this conversation because we got more in us? I don't know. It's interesting.
For us, I think it's a little bit of both, right? You do definitely start to see yourself age. As your kids age, you want to go back into those younger years, right, with the kids, because it's a lot of fun, right? But then again, when you start to really calculate the math on the age and you say, okay, well, this next child, whenever the next child gets here, okay, I'll be 64. And,
Right.
like something to that does not add up,
Right. Totally. But I'll tell you, I met this family and they live in Northern California and I think they have 12, 13, 14 kids. It's 13 or 14. And the dad is, in his probably almost 60, but the dude like has carried himself well. So he doesn't look, like he's a grandfather. Although he probably like one of his kids probably has a kid by this point. But interesting. Yeah. We kind of stopped at 5 because we didn't want to jump into like the weird van, we had to have the Sprinter just to get around. But I don't know. All right. So where does your family reside? Where do you where do you guys do life?
We do life in El Dorado Hills, California.
Nice.
So,
and then
go ahead.
Now, I love and hate this question. This question is about what you do. I hate the question because so many of us men size each other up based on like what our jobs are. But I think it's helpful for men when they're listening to go, it doesn't matter if somebody is, pumps gas at a gas station or runs a company with 10,000 employees. The reality is as a father, I'm going to have the same, my son is going into puberty. My daughter is going to date her first, boy. We go through the same experiences. So with that being said, in a minute or so, what is it that you do to provide value to the world and feed your family?
So I'm the CEO and owner of a healthcare company in Sacramento, California. Have about 300 employees total. But you know what, Ned? I have been on both sides of the world, right? So grew up very, very, very humble beginnings. And so I'm so thankful that I've been able to go on this journey. I mean, I feel blessed because I've been on both sides. And to be honest with you, I think when life's a little bit more simpler, you're able to take in the moments with your kids a lot easier and more frequently. So I think the busier we get, the less time you actually have to spend time with your family and to be a great father. So I think it's a blessing and a curse,
Yeah. So talk to me about this for a second. So how long have you been the owner of this company, roughly?
Just celebrated 10 years.
Okay, beautiful. So 10 years, in 10 years, you go from you with an idea to 10 years later, 300 employees. Obviously, that's very successful. Now you're at this point where in several conversations I've had with you and even just what you said now, it sounds like there's this point where you start to reflect on what matters most to me. Like you got a little air, you could breathe a little, and you're reflecting. So what are some of those things that pop up for you to go, man, how do I want to spend the next 10 years?
So Ned, I just, in the last probably quarter, have just been able to get to the majority of their baseball games, soccer games. So it took, and there's also an age gap, right, between my first son and my second son. And the reason being was because we didn't want to bring another life into this world as we were starting this company out. And so we held off for 5 years because it really takes a lot out of you to start these businesses. But at the end of the day, whenever you rest your head at night, it's not about how successful you are. It's really about those that are laying in the beds around you, right? So I think that I'm starting to learn more of that today, especially as kids get older, right? And you realize that they don't stay young, but so long. I read something the other day. I don't know if I told you this whenever we saw each other. I don't know how true these statistics are, but it really hit home. And it basically said that 93% of the time that you're going to spend with that child is between birth and 18 years of age. So once your child gets 18, there's 7% more left, right? So it really just kind of shows you the importance of taking it in during these moments, season more of these moments.
Yeah, I mean, and the cool thing though, so a couple of highlights I see is like one, you're seeing that now, right? Your kid's 11 and you've built something that is going to give you more freedom during their teenage years than a lot of people might have, based on how you can build your schedule because you have a good team. The other thing I wrestle with too, I have 9 employees right now. And when I look at the way that you're providing a job and I'm providing a job, I mean, I see how much you care about your people. Like I see how you go to bat for them. And what's cool is you've taken your humble beginnings, your understanding of life. And I mean, and you and I had multiple conversations around things because you're thinking about a family and what their kids are going through and what their life is about. So it's hard to also go, okay, both are important, right? My kids are important, but also I'm providing 300 homes with a place that cares about them, which is not the average company. You know what I mean?
So in my work life, the employee's always first. And I have I
see that. It's true.
I have 100%, the employee comes first. Very, very, very little turnover in my organization. But then again, so much of my energy is spent there, right? And so it's almost, whenever you get home, you're almost drained, but you have to kick it into second gear in order to go in, and you're just at your second job, right? And I don't mean it that way, but now you have to perform those 8 hours that you're in the office, or maybe even 10 hours in the office.
Yeah.
Now you've got to show up for your family as well. So you need to be just as on point whenever you enter those doors as when you leave the house, And sometimes it's hard.
Oh yeah, it's hard, and I think it's such a great point you make. Is we're not really even looking at time anymore. We're looking at energy. Like if how much energy am I coming home with? One thing I started doing as you're kind of reflecting on, okay, what does the next 10 years look like? Is when I do my 3, 5, and 10-year goals now, I put what my kids' ages are going to be at each of those.
Yeah.
So if you're like, okay, I'm at 44, at 54, I'm going to have 1,000 employees. Let's just say that was the goal, right? I'm not saying it is, but then you say, oh my God, my son's going to be 21. He's not going to live here anymore. So then what I've been able to do is kind of back off my goals or say, hey, you know what? That's actually a 20-year goal, or that's not even a goal that I care about anymore.
Yeah.
So putting their ages on the bottom of my spreadsheet has been pretty cool.
I'm really looking forward to, this is a double-edged sword, right? But my wife and I, we really do have a good marriage, right? So whenever the kids do leave, we are going to have a good time together. Like I know so much. You hear about these marriages too, whenever the kids age out of the home, and now the wife and the husband are looking at each other saying, I didn't sign up for this, right? Because life changes over the years. I can promise you, when that time hits, we're going to just get in the car and go somewhere. I mean, we're going to be busy. We're going to have a good time together.
Yeah. So let me ask this, because marriage is so critical. I think it's one of the best gifts we can give our kids. It's one of the hardest things we'll ever do in this life. But you're 13 years in, you built a successful company. So a lot of your energy was there. Mama was probably really taking care of the boys a lot. Yep. What's something that you've done to help her know she's still a priority? For you to say 13 years in, we're friends, we like each other. What's something that you've done to keep that feeling true?
I think in my office, whenever I go into the office, it's almost like I transition into business, right? But when I come home, I'm still a family person, and so I think me remaining humble as well, because just like you said, when we were starting out this business, my wife was a very successful cardiac defibrillator sales rep for Boston Scientific.
I understood 2 of those words, but go on.
Yeah. So anyway, we're changing the ceiling fan in my house, and I mean, she was in an all dominating man world. I mean, one of a very few females in that world. And I was changing a ceiling fan in the house, and she said, "You know how I've always supported you?" And I said, "Absolutely, always has supported me, 100%, hands down." She says, "Well, I've always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom." And I said, "Why the hell are you still working? Like, get out, But it took, her saying, "My dream is not to go out and be just dominating in my career. I want to dominate at my home." So that really has been
wow.
So she runs this house 100%. I am not in control at this home. She does a great job. I mean, the kids are top priority. I am her top priority. So the house as a unit is her top priority. So I have found that, hey, she runs her business, which is the house, and I run my business, which is out of the house. So, and I feel like that has worked really well for us.
Man, what's your wife's name?
Dana.
So just a huge shout out to Dana, because I would love to hear this more. It's such a touchy subject. I don't know why, but it's a touchy subject. Like, I have 4 daughters, and if I bring up kind of like the stay-at-home mom thing, our culture has like beat up on that. Like, you have to have a side hustle. You have to, this is what makes you valuable. And so I've been having more conversations with my daughters about this. And I think it's good for them to get perspective from other women too, of like, at the end of the day, what really matters to you, right? And so, real quick example is my daughter's like, I'm going to, she wants to be an OBGYN and deliver babies. And so I started
which is great.
Which is great. Yeah. Yes, do that. But also, I want you to put your fast forward to 35 years old. You have a 3-month-old and you're called at 2 a.m. to go deliver this baby. So just start to think about, okay, you're going to leave the baby, leave to go do this. I'm not saying you can't do both. I'm just saying, think about these scenarios. And so it's opened up a lot of conversation with my daughters. There's this great C.S. Lewis quote, real quick. I'm going to butcher it, but it says the greatest or the ultimate career, something about the ultimate career is the stay-at-home mom. Yeah. All other careers exist to support the ultimate career. And I just want to bring that up more in our culture.
I want to tell you something. So my wife got a opportunity to have a big promotion within that company. And we were just getting married. I don't think we were married yet. Matter of fact, I know we were not. And I said, Dana, you've got to take that job. Go crush it, kill it. It's for you. You can do it, so forth. And she looked at me and she said, Phillip, I'll take that job, but you have to be a stay-at-home dad. I said, don't take the job. Like, it literally was so clear. Like, it was 100% clear, that because one person had, when you're that involved, right? Just like you said, the OBGYN scenario, she was on call all the time in the ORs at 3:00 in the morning or 5:00 in the morning. That's really difficult. And you don't realize the joy or the love or just the responsibility whenever when that child enters the world. There's a lot of things that change at that point, right? So you may think, all right, I want to be an OBGYN or all those sorts of things, which is a great career. So, hands off, hey, chase that dream. However, when you get married and you have a child, things do change, but life changes, right, Ned? Through our conversations, I've probably gone through 3 changes just here discussing things with you, right? And what was at that point in the beginning to now, there's been a lot of changes. So I think that's one of the things you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, but you have to be open. And I think that's important. It's nice to have a direction you're going, but then be open. Now, you talked about things changing when you become a dad. So the question for you is, when did you embrace fatherhood and or what changed for you? So I think the moment you hear you're going to be a dad to the moment you see your baby be born, which is wild, to your kid taking their first steps, there's these kind of like moments where I think dads start to see like, oh, cool, this matters to me, right?
Yeah.
For you, when did it hit you that fatherhood really, you embraced it?
I hit it a little bit later. So it wasn't in the very beginning, Ned.
Mm-hmm.
So it was probably 5 years into I tell you when it really hit me is when our second child was born. I was probably working, I don't even know, 60, 80 hours a week up until the second child was born. And when the second child was born, the first child he's a mama's boy. And so when the second child came, it almost opened up a spot for me, right? It opened up this spot to me that our second child, he loved me. I mean, he wanted me. He depended on me. I think that's he depended on me. And I think once I had a child that was dependent upon me, that's whenever it really hit.
Wow. The way you even said he depended on me was like, it meant something. And I think us men don't realize the fulfillment we get when we get to serve, right? When we're depended on, when we're needed, it's like, dude, I want to show up big time for that. And I think sometimes we think like all our family needs is for us to go make money for them. Like that's my sole job. But when you open yourself up vulnerably to have a human depend on you, it does something to you.
Yeah.
Man, it's beautiful. Now, what changed for you?
I want to go back to your daughter.
Yeah, go for it.
For a second, too, about having the career and the stay-at-home wife or mom. I want you to know, I think it's very important, like, our money is our money. So 100%. So she has never had to call me up and say, hey, I need a tank of gas, or I need to go buy something for the house, or whatever it may be. Our money is our money. And I think that when you start to talk to other men, I've heard that be leveraged, and that was leveraged in my childhood a lot. So I knew immediately whenever I became married that money would not be leveraged in my house, because the kids, this person is spending so many hours with your child.
Yeah.
If that person's going without, guess who else is going without? The kids are going without, right? So I think that's been the secret to our 13 years of marriage.
Wow. Well, as you say that, I'm convicted and or want to be honest. I don't think I really got that until maybe 3 to 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I think that I treated my time, because I was bringing home the bacon, and my wife has stayed home since we had Brooklyn. Brooklyn's 18. I wouldn't say I leveraged it in a mean way, but I do think that I looked at it as, hey, my time is more valuable. Like, what an idiot, though, because she's raising 5 kids, and there were times, I mean, dude, let's see, my twins are 14. 14 years ago, we were on free cheese and milk from the government. I had 3 jobs, and she was standing in line at the grocery store with 4 little kids getting, free formula. Yeah. I did it once. It was horrible. And so, man, it took me, and I share that to go, it took me a minute to look at she's serving in this capacity and I'm serving in this capacity. And what an honor. Like, I should just be handing it all over. Like, that should be my view. And it wasn't. Yeah. So, thank you for sharing that.
I mean, to be a stay-at-home mom, you really are giving up a lot too, right? Like, I mean,
yeah, bro, for sure.
I used to, my wife used to say, call me when you leave work. And I'd be like, I'm not calling. I just want to be silent. I want to take this car ride all the way home, Yeah. And just be silent, right?
Yeah.
And when I come to realize, wait a minute, her only conversation is with a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about that, right? So, you were in this home for 10 hours or 8 hours or however long it is, and the only person you're having a conversation with is a 2-year-old. Ooh, that's kind of rough, right? I mean, I could do that for a day. I could do that for 2 days, maybe a week. That'd be pushing it a little bit. So,
Yeah, but 2 years,
God, I couldn't
you
even
know,
imagine. I could not
yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, moms do sacrifice a lot, and just things like your kids are a little, 6 and 11 now, so you might be getting out of this. But I think what a lot of dads miss is that identity piece for moms is like helping moms have some time for themselves, so that their identity doesn't just become feeling like slave. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so giving mom space to get out and go do some things is really important. I want to jump into a couple things, but one final question for you is, what would you say the role of the father is? If you were to kind of define what a role of a father is, what would that be?
You know, I you know, I think it's different for different people, right? I think a lot of that is learned through your childhood, right? I think what defines you. So I grew up without a dad.
Hmm.
So whenever I knew I was going to be a father, so it's one of the things, one of the questions that you had said, what influenced you, or what? I was looking at the questions last night, and which I didn't answer any of them. So here we are having a true, honest conversation. But how I learned to be a father was by knowing the things that I did, or knowing what I did not want to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So whenever you say, what is my role as a father? I think it's, my ultimate goal for a father is for my children to be independent.
Hmm.
And so I am geared in a way of just exploring things with them, of what they're wanting to be when they graduate from high school, right? So we know what our kids are doing between now and 18.
Mm-hmm.
But when I graduated, no one was there to say, hey, what do you want to do now? Like, this is a big world out here. What are you going to do? And
Hmm.
so I had to kind of, sift through all of that myself. So my role is to teach my kids how to be independent.
Hmm. And what I hear you say in that is,
But there's a lot that goes into that, right? There's love that goes into that.
oh
There's
yeah.
moments that go into that. That is a lot of time goes into that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of the things I think of when I think of independent, and just the way you phrase it is to teach our kids to think.
Correct.
Right. And when they graduate, one, they're going to have an incredible resource in you, because you're going to be standing there to support them. So it's like they're independent because they can think for themselves, but they have an incredible resource, you and Dana, to turn to as a rock, as an anchor, as they go through life.
Yeah.
The other thing I like about independent is you're open for them to be challenged, right? Like, let me give these kids some challenges, so I mean, ultimately, so that they can critically think,
Yeah.
and solve problems, which is what you need to be able to
Well,
do
life
out in
is
the real
hard.
world.
Like, life is hard, right?
Life is hard.
And my kids are, I grew up we didn't have anything. So, and so making it in this world, right? My kids are home, which is easier to climb the mountain than to be thrown from the top down, right? So I almost look at this life that my kids have is way different, but you have to parent differently, right? So they have to understand that, they have to earn things. So a couple of years ago, probably about 2 years ago, I came in to the house, and I had I'd been signing cards for employee appreciation, and so every employee, I'd put $100 in the card, and thank them for their services, right, and thank them for being a loyal employee and a great employee. So I came home and I had $200 bills in my pocket, Ned. And so my 11-year-old was 9. My 6-year-old was 4. So I knew my 4-year-old would not know what that $100 was, right? I knew that. But my 9-year-old should know what that $100 meant, right? So
Right. The value. Yeah.
both of them, the 9-year-old did exactly what the 4-year-old did: throw it on the counter and run and go play in the house. And I knew at that point that I had to teach them what that $100 bill actually meant, right? So so my 9-year-old, and since then, he goes to work with me one day a week while he's out during the summer months. And he works 8 hours. If I work 8 hours that day, he works 8 hours. If I work 10, he works 10. And but I pack his lunch that day, so he and I will sit in the boardroom, have our lunch together. He gets to work on time. He takes his lunches, and so at the end of the day, the accounting department pays him for however many hours that was. So he gets paid minimum wage, and he leaves and minimum wage is a lot of money now, right? So
I know, right?
I feel bad. I should not be paying him minimum wage, but I do. And he leaves with, I don't know, $80 in his pocket. I don't know. And but now he gets to spend that money as well. So I'm trying to teach him that life is not as simple as it is for you right this second. It actually gets way harder.
Yeah, man, that's so good. I want to bring this to light more of dads bringing their kids to work. Like 100 years ago, that was the norm every day of the week, and now it's somebody told me the other day that they didn't know what their dad did for a living until they were like 18. And I've had teenagers come to my house, like my kids' friends. I'm like, yo, what does your dad do for work? And they're like, I don't really know.
That's kind of weird, right? That's weird.
It's weird. Yeah. It's weird. It's like, Dad, you are missing your opportunity to take whatever it is that you're good at and just share it with your kids. Like, who cares if it's selling insurance, right? So it's funny is 3 of my kids are homeschooled now. So part of the deal was when I go on a business trip, they have to go with me now.
Good.
And so then they're, when I was at your office, I had my daughter and she was in there during the whole open enrollment and, met everybody, met Patty, met the people. And I'm like, this is so important for our kids to start to understand this. Yeah, very important. Okay. Did you have a thought? If not, I'm going to ask you a question.
It goes back to, nobody's taught to count money nowadays, right? So, I guarantee you, I think my older son now he'll get it. But if I had a $25 Visa credit card and I held up a $100 bill, I guarantee you my 6-year-old is going to take the $25 Visa card. Because they just think that, that thing's unlimited, right? Like you can buy anything on that thing, right? They don't understand the value of actually counting money, holding money, and spending money, which is a big, big, valuable lesson in life.
Yeah, we've been working with our kids a lot on finances. Dave Ramsey has a couple good homeschool courses that I've just been teaching my kids, even the non-homeschool ones, taking them through it, just to give them a good foundation of finances. Because that's really the thing that can really screw people up is that, especially that darn credit card, just living in deficit always.
Yeah.
Okay. What I try to talk to dads about is how much power they have. Like, we get to create. And I don't think we always realize that we can put something on the calendar. We can say we're going to do something and we can actually make it happen. Yeah. And you and I had a 5-minute conversation the other day. And you shared such a rad story about your son saying something and you taking that thing that he said and you finding a way to bring it to reality. Little different than what he said, but I'd love to hear what he said in the back of the car and then what you guys went and did.
So, I was telling you a little bit about this. So my kids are different. So, my oldest is a brainiac and my youngest wants to play every sport and be rough, so I've got 2 different kids. Okay. So my oldest son, I was taking him to school. And he was riding in the back seat of the car, and he said, "Dad, can I want to meet Elon Musk? Can you arrange for me to meet Elon Musk?" And
that's so awesome.
So in his mind, I can do anything, right? So
Yeah, no doubt. My kids, I
right?
don't think they'd think I could do
So
that.
I said, Kay, Dad can't. What do you mean? And he says he starts talking about the galaxy and the solar system, and he knows Elon builds rockets, and so he's kind of in this engineer phase of what does he want to be when he grows up, and he at this point he wants to work on rockets. So he wants to build. He wants to do something in building a rocket. He said, Dad, I really want to go to SpaceX. And so I said, okay, well, I don't even know if I can make this happen. And mind you, I'm not saying anything to him. I'm just letting him talk to me. I'm letting him express that thought as a whole to me. So I drop him off to school and I call up my assistant and I said, Patsy, I need you to see if you can arrange for me to take a tour, me and my son to take a tour of SpaceX. And so I'm driving into work, and it's probably a 45-minute drive. And I get to the office, and she says, Phillip, I can't get you into SpaceX, but I can get you at Kennedy Space Center. And so at that point, I asked her, we went through all the different things that we could do at Kennedy Space Center. And so part of his Christmas present was he opened up a gift that basically said that he was going to Kennedy Space Center. And he in our tour that we got to do was just number one, he and I went by ourselves. We did not the whole trip not by ourselves, but the Kennedy Space Center 100% by ourselves. We got to tour. We got backstage tours of Kennedy Space Center. We got to go to all the launch sites. But another thing was we got to have lunch with the astronaut. And so while we were having lunch, I mean, he was able to ask the astronaut whatever questions he wanted to ask. And so at this point, he's just really intrigued by space, and he wants to work on a rocket. And that was a good trip for him and I, just to go to that park, experience it. We were together for the whole day, and we got to talk through things. And typically, whenever you're out, it's more, Mom typically gets more of the questions than I do. And it was 100% all me that day, and we had the best time. So now who knows what he does with that? I don't know, but I will continue to foster it, and I will continue to I'm not someone that puts pressure on my kids, right? I'm not going to say, okay, well, what's next? But I will continue to foster that, because if that's what he wants to do and he wants to explore that, I'm going to make sure that he has the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, man, Phillip, a couple things, and I really want dads to get this. Like, one, you said when your son said this in the car, you didn't say, "Oh, that's not possible," or "That's crazy," or whatever, and shut him down, right? You said you let him keep talking, although in your mind you're like, I can't sit down with Elon Musk probably, but then it's like, okay, well then what else, right? So what else can we do? How do I meet my kid's need, and also not go, well, my kid's only 11, or he's probably not going to be an astronaut, or he might not work on rockets. The words that you kept saying where you wanted to foster that. And so as fathers, it's such an opportunity that we get to know what matters to our kids and find ways that we can cultivate fostering that thought, like them pursuing something. And it's like, it comes back to us serving those around us and knowing them at whatever stage they're in. Shoot, in 2 years, he might be into something else, but then you get to go be on that journey with him as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an opportunity for dads.
Isn't that an opportunity to connect, though, right? Like, I think whenever we're in the world of homework and sports, after school activities, those sorts of things, there's not a lot of time to actually just connect one-on-one.
Yeah.
And those opportunities allow you to connect, and that's what it's about.
Yeah, and if you can make those moments happen, they're so rich.
Yeah.
And it's possible, right? It's possible. And I want dads to hear it's possible to go do things. It's possible to take a day off work and to go spend the whole day with your kid. Even if it's not flying to the other side of the country, you go see, rocket ships.
Yeah.
There's other things that you can do. Just be open and aware to that.
You know what I do? So my youngest son, for some reason, we have a lot more time to connect. And I don't know if it's just because my older son's busier, but I make it a point to ask him, what does he want to do with dad next? So I know the next thing that we do together, we're going to a golf course here, Turkey Creek. Don't know why he chose that one, but he did.
Nice.
We're going to go play 18 holes of golf together, And so before that was he wanted to see, Kung Fu Panda. I have no idea.
Oh, yeah.
Kung Fu Panda 4, I think. And so is making time this morning. My oldest son had to go to school for rehearsal. But I took my youngest son. We went out to the place that we have here at Greenwood to go fishing. So I don't know if life's a little bit more simpler for the youngest one at this point, that we have more time to connect. But I have to make it a priority to connect with my older one for sure.
Yeah. And so I think that's really important to say, because I noticed, even if I just looked through my Instagram feed the other day, and one of my kids, I hadn't really seen them in it. And I'm like, dude, I need to set aside a day to go do something with this kid. And it's because she's way busier than everybody else. Yeah. And I support all her stuff. But I put on my top of my priorities is find a way to go spend a day with her. Now that might mean me taking off a day of work to just go find a way to spend with her. But I only have so much time, right? Yeah. And so keeping that at the forefront is important. I also wanted to bring up learning something new with your kid, and this is actually what started the big interest in us connecting and talking more about fatherhood. Was you shared that about the flying. So where are you guys at with flying, and what's been going on with that?
So there it was again. I'm driving. He's in the back seat of the car, and we're talking about. What does he want to be when he grows up? And he says, Dad, I want to be a pilot, right? And so I'm like, okay. So you want Dad to take you to the airport? And, he says, of course, that's what he wants to do. So and the area, Cameron Park, right? So it's a rural area up here, and they have an airport. And so I'm thinking the airport's going to be open, right? I'm just going to be able to drive up to the airport and get out and walk around, And so I get to excuse me. I get to the Cameron Park Airport only to find out that it's completely gated and closed off. And so we park. And we're waiting for this pilot. The pilot's just landed, so we look like, we're out there going to harass somebody, And so I'm waving him down like, hey, pilot, can you let me in? Can you let my son in and look at your plane? And he says, of course. And he lets me in, and he lets Cade get into his plane. And, he's just talking to him. We're coming to find out he owns a flying school there. And so he says, hey, come to my hangar. And so he's got 3 or 4 other airplanes there. And so Cade is just, when I tell you just Jones, and I mean,
I'm sure.
On 10, he is sitting in all of these airplanes and, just learning. When I tell you just learning. And so I go home and my wife says, well, what are you going to do with that? And I said, I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. I don't have time to take pilot lessons. I was just just seemed like a lot to take on. And one thing he did mention to me was that he would allow Cade to fly with me. So whenever I'm flying, Cade can fly in the back seat. And so I told my wife that. And so Christmas time came around, and this was 2 years ago. And I start unpackaging my Christmas presents or whatnot that my wife had given me. And so the first was some aviator sunglasses. Didn't think anything about it. Like, oh, these are nice sunglasses. Thank you. And I opened it was a bomber jacket. And I said, oh, this is a nice jacket, And I still haven't put 2 and 2 together. And the third thing I opened up was my flight bag. And so the bag was a flight bag, and it said Phillip McMillan's flight bag. And I said, where are we going? I'm thinking like, where? I mean, we're fixing to go somewhere. I have no idea what all of them. I'm not even putting it all together. And inside the bag was a gift certificate to receive my pilot's lessons. And so I'm like, okay, this is a lot. So I probably did, to be honest with you. So I did it for probably 8-9 months. My instructor ended up moving from here back to Idaho. And from that time, I've kind of lost touch with things, but that's probably been about 6 months or 7 months. It's still nagging at me in the back of my head, but I can definitely fly a plane. I can land a plane. I can take off in the plane, but I do not have my certificate at this point. But Kate and I go up.
How many times did he go with you?
Probably 2 or 3 times total. In total,
epic.
But I was flying at 7:00 in the morning. So what does that mean? Yeah. Okay, so now I got to get the 11-year-old up
right
at 5:30 in the morning. And so you can see that I had some challenges there. But he got to fly as much as he wanted to with me. And that was just really neat to be able to.
Yeah. And you know what? Yeah, and I love the story. I think that you don't have your pilot's license, and that I think that's a great part of the story, because I think too many of the times it's like, well, we went, and then now I have my own plane and fly it. And I think guys are like, man, that's just so unrealistic. But just to go try something for a little bit, you know what I mean? And I wrote this down as you shared the story. One, your kids share something in the backseat of the car. How many of us hear our kids say crazy shit in the car that we never follow through on? But 2 things: you take your kid to NASA, and you take your kid flying in a plane. Things that most dads will never say that they did, because they didn't just follow through on something their kid said. But here's the piece that I really love, dude. When you roll up to the airport, there's a gate.
Yeah.
And I just see a dad and a son roll up to a gate. There's nobody freaking around. It's like, what the hell are we doing here? And it's so easy for us dads or people in general just to give up, just to be like, well, okay, this is too hard. But no, some dude lands, and again, you just have you have no problem just saying, hey, come here, And I think if dads would show their kids that more.
Yeah.
How many dads are complaining about life and the man and these were held down because of X, Y, or Z, instead of just shouting over the gate and creating a moment. Now, that guy could have told you to piss off.
He could have.
Or he could have invited you in and sit in planes and fly together, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much possibility, and I don't want dads to miss teaching their kids to chase it.
I heard something about something the other day, and it was talking about luck, and I don't remember exactly what it was. But you know how when people say if they have something, they're lucky, right? But it goes back to exactly what you just said. It's about seizing the opportunity.
Yep.
So that's really how people begin to be lucky, right? They're number one, they're in tune to what's going on around them, and they're picking up opportunities. So the other day I took my youngest son, we were throwing the football together, and he's into baseball, like he's doing coach pitch. And so, he thinks he's a major league baseball player.
Yeah.
And funny story on that. We may run out of time here, but I started thinking, there's batting cages a couple of miles away. And I did not know if that was going to be a hit or miss. I didn't know if he would be able to do it. But he's someone that he's pretty strong-willed. And so I take him to the batting cage. And next thing you know, Ned, I've got, baseball pitches coming at him at 35 miles an hour. I'll send you the video. And he is so small. He's 6 years old. He's about 35 pounds. And he's just sitting there and hitting the balls.
Oh, yes.
I mean, and it's really about taking these opportunities, there's a few things that we do with our kids, which are take those opportunities, but we also make sure that they go to church too. So, I think that it's also important that we raise them to be, Christians. We raise them to have great morals. And we also I think if you do that, you really raise good human beings, right? Because at the end of the day, our future is really in their hands, right? At some point. So, that's who's going to be running the world, are those kids.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I was sitting with my friend having lunch the other day, and he was talking about not teaching our kids to not pursue success, but to make success less important and character more important.
Yeah.
He was just saying, I'd rather my kid take a longer period of time to build a company or do whatever to find, quote unquote, success, as long as his point was character. Focus on your kids' character and help your kids see that character is important. And I think when you're making church and faith and morality a part of their life, it's not just money and freedom.
No.
It's what do you do with money and freedom? And if you don't have character as an anchor to base, then no matter what you acquire in this lifetime, it will be selfish focused. And if it's selfish focused and not outward focused, then you miss out. You're not happy.
Yeah. That's one thing about it that's one thing I can say about myself is I'm not selfish. I am not. I think the more people that can experience it, the better the opportunity is, right? And so that I agree with you. They have to be good humans, Ned, because if they're not good humans, then have we really done a good job raising them to be a good father? Yeah. And something you said earlier, which I think is important for dads to hear, is when we talk about being a good human, there's no arrival, right? And you said, even from us meeting 9 months ago, you've changed a few times. I've changed a few times, right? We're growing. And that's what we want our kids to see is dad is growing. Dad makes mistakes. Dad owns up to it, and dad continues to move on and grow as a human. And that's what we want our kids to do, is to do the same. Yeah.
But we have to be that example.
For sure.
Phillip, man, we could talk for hours, but I am going to ask you my last question in a second here. But is there any stories or anything you'd share with a dad, anything that comes to mind that we missed or that, we don't want to have not shared before I ask my final question?
No, I think it's been pretty transparent. This conversation is, seize the opportunities, right? Whether they're big or small, and because really and truly the time that you're spending with that child is what really matters.
Yeah. It's the thing that fills you the most, for sure. All right, my friend, then here's my last question for you. It's a legacy question. Okay. So imagine yourself, let's say 30 years from now. Okay, your oldest son will be about your age today. Yep. They may have families, live in their lives. If you were standing out in the street, peering into their homes, what would you see playing out in their homes that just put a big smile on your face, a tear in your eye, and just you knew that you showed up as a father in this lifetime?
I think being, putting the family first. I think being... I would hope that I would peer in and see grandkids, see a wife, see the family there around the table, just being very engaged, just, a lot of happiness, just a well-balanced family. I think if you want me to level with you, it's just to be well-balanced and happy. I think that's another key point, is to be very happy.
Well, I think the imagery that you painted of you said it in just a couple words. You said to be around the table.
Yeah.
And I think when you think about kids and a mom and dad coming and sitting around a table, that happiness, that joy, that contentment with life. It's like dad's not sitting on the couch watching his show. Mom's not pissed off, in the kitchen. The kids aren't, they're around the table. Yeah. And I think that imagery is slowly getting lost in our culture. However, I think guys like you, guys like me, guys that are listening to this are fighting for those moments, right? Whether it's around the table, whether it's at the batting cages, whether it's at NASA, or just driving in the car together. So, Phillip, man, I love that you are on the pursuit of fatherhood, right? It's a craft. We're always getting better at this thing. And the life that you're living for your wife, for your kids, is such a testament to the work you've done on yourself and that you're continuing to grow. So, bro, thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your life. And I look forward to just continuing to get to know you.
For sure. Well, thank you for having me, Ned, first and foremost. So I appreciate being here. I'm glad I could share my story, and I hope somebody learns from it. So,
oh, for sure. All right, my friend. Until next time.
See you soon.
What another incredible conversation. I mean, two things that really stick out to me are, one, the emotion behind him saying, my second son just depended on me. I mean, the way he said it, it's like, it's more than a feeling. It's so deep, our opportunity as fathers, and to allow that vulnerability for our child to depend on us, and for us to know that, it can create a connection. And you and I both know it. We desire that ourselves with our own fathers. So let's not deprive our children of that. Let's figure out how to open our heart, open ourselves up, and create that with our child. The other thing that really hit me is a constant reminder that, like, my wife is a stay-at-home mom, and I want to support that. And I don't want to view what I'm doing out in the workforce as more important. It is not more important. And I want to say it, but I want to believe it. And I sense that Phillip has got that down, and that was very much an inspiration for me. All right, my friends, please write a review. Just take a minute, write a review. It helps spread the word that what you and I do every day when we get up and hustle for our families matters, and we want other dudes to do the same. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That's who your kids, spouse, and your community needs. This is your guide, Ned Shout. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact, and let's create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.